Hi, I'm Pharaoh, and today I'm going to continue my series of videos on Xeno Arena. Specifically this time I want to focus in on the actual interface that we're using when we're playing. Because I see a few people that talk about things, and I think they may be getting a little bit confused about how it works. And if we really focus in on what's going on in the interface, I think that clears up a lot of confusion as to how the actual battles work and what's going on and why certain things are happening and when. So the previous two videos were very much about how the system works, i.e. what we have to do in order to gain the creatures from Oceanus and the titles, but this one is very focused on individual battles and what's going on the screen. So let's get to that. So the first thing to look at is the overall layout. Now, including the obvious, we're on the left hand side, and at the top it shows us, and then it shows them on the right hand side at the top. So that's our names and where we are positioned. And on the bottom right, we have the things we can actually do per turn. We have abilities that we can use, and we have the ability to rest, swap our creature, or resign. And talking of turns, in the top middle, we have a turn counter. Now, this is something that you can sometimes take your eye off in the heat of the battle, and I would say it's a good idea to keep track of when the turns are changing, because knowing exactly what turn you're in really helps. There are some multi-turn abilities, for example, or abilities that take a few turns to take effect. Another key thing to keep track of is whose turn it is, and we have a marker on the top left just above our health bar. Here, this little green marker actually tells us how much agility we have and the fact that we're moving first. If our opponent had a higher agility, he'd be moving first and it would be above his health bar. Now we can see our stats here and we can see what my agility is. Now the relative agility can change during a battle. So again, it's worth keeping an eye on, because as the turns change or as we swap creatures out, who has the initiative will change. Now hovering at the top left here, we can see more details about our current creature. From the top we have our creature name, the level it's at, and the biome it's from, plus the class of our stats and their numerical value, and our relative advantages and disadvantages. The health stat is reflected on the right here, where we see our current health and our maximum health, and obviously the bar itself will go down as our current health declines. Ignoring the pop-up for a moment, we have three indicators here. We have the level of our creature, we have its class overall, an average class, and we have the biome again. So these three little icons at the top left hand side are visible at all times, and again the biome of our creature can actually change as we go along. There are certain abilities that can change that, so again it's worth keeping an eye on this thing. I would stress that already there are quite a few things that we can keep an eye on during the battle. You kind of get used to them, but I do recommend at least flicking your eyes around the screen whenever you're making your decisions. Something that's less necessary to pay attention to is this marker. It simply tells us that in this turn, who has to act now. I mean, it's kind of obvious when it's our turn because we have options in the bottom right hand corner. There are times when these things can be greyed out, but in general, because we've got the options down here, we don't need to look at this marker. I guess if you got interrupted, you might want to double check what's going on, but our attention is naturally drawn down here. Now, because it's our turn first, it actually tells us down here, but obviously if it hadn't been our turn first, then this would already be scrolling past, so you might not spot this. Because agility is so important, we can actually check our agility here, 314, against our opponent's agility on the far right hand side in the corresponding position, so 213, so we can see why we're moving first. But also creatures can swap around. The current creature for each of us is in yellow in these circles, and we can see the current agility, and we can see the agility and the other stats for the other creatures. We can compare our agility to the other animals. So for instance, if we were to beat this creature and move on to the next creature, we can see whether we would maintain the initiative. We might, for instance, want to make a decision about whether to swap this character out before they're dead, or if the other character's nearly dying, what's going to happen next, giving us a chance to think ahead. And as you can see, everything is mirrored on this side. So we have all of the details of the other creature that's active on the other side of the table. So we have the health, for instance, we have their maximum health and their current health, and obviously the health bar, which is showing us what they are currently in a visual form. I have seen the current health go higher than the overall health. I'm not sure if that's a glitch. I've never seen it on my side of the board. I have a feeling it's a glitch, but we'll see as things go on. If, for instance, you've seen an ability that does actually increase health above maximum, then let me know in the comments, because I'm not 100% sure either way at the moment. So because things are mirrored, we can see their stats. They have the same three symbols: their level, their class, and their active biome. And we sometimes have abilities to change it. Right now we're kind of at our natural advantage because we are strong against desert, but if it was something else, say frost, we could change it to desert. And even though we have the biome advantage right now, it can be worth checking to see what the other creatures are. So for instance, our weakness as far as attacking us and what we can't defend against is frost, and we can check here to see if anything coming up is frost. And we can see number 3 here is frost, so we need to be wary of that in the future. Especially when considering which creatures to bring back into the fight if that frost creature does well against us. And while we're here, just a couple of notes about class. We can see our overall class and the individual classes of our creatures, and I honestly don't think class is anywhere near as important as people seem to be emphasizing online. I understand the desire for everybody to get the best creatures they can and to make sure they have S-class creatures and triple S-class creatures, but I really don't think it's that important. I've certainly been battling away quite successfully with the creatures I've got and making the best of what I have. I understand the desire to min-max, and I often do min-max things, but considering I'm trying to get all of the rewards from Oceanus, I feel like I'm wasting my time if I'm running around too often looking for creatures. It doesn't seem as important. So class advantage does matter. They obviously have higher stats, but they appear to overlap somewhat, as far as I can tell at least. Now, another reason we might be checking their stat block is to see what their advantages are against. And so, for instance, they have an advantage against fire for defense, and so if I was to bring in a fire creature, and I do actually have a fire creature, then it would be able to defend against it better. So I can kind of make my plans. Now, I'm not suggesting you check all of this stuff all of the time, but this is where you can find this information should you need it. While we're talking about the other creatures, the yellow circle tells us which creature is currently active. And again, that's mirrored for our opposition. And some things can happen to the various creatures when they're not actually in play. For instance, if our creature had a negative ability placed on it, maybe by the opposition, maybe through our own choice, and it was going to take damage or maybe heal in the future, it would still happen in the background. And that will be visually shown by these health bars. We'll be able to see them going up and down, even though the creatures that we're looking at here are not actively in play. And these health bars might be useful to make that decision about whether to bring a creature back in. So healing, you might see these little blue bars below the circles increase, or if it was taking damage in the background, you might see those decrease or even get completely knocked out. We might, for example, deliberately choose to move a creature off the board if it's going to heal later, and therefore things are kind of happening in parallel. We can do something else with our current creature, or we might think, oh, it's definitely going to die, and move it off the board and allow it to die off screen while we're doing other things. And the same on the positive side with healing. It might heal in a few turns, but we'd rather be doing other things with a creature that's more suited to the current battle. For example, if we were to get frozen, we might be forced to rest for a turn or swap our character out. But at least with the health bars, we can keep track of some of the things going on in the background. It is also reflected in the narrative on the bottom left. Talking of swapping out our creatures, if we actually click on this option, then we get to choose which one we want to bring in next, but we don't have to, we can just go back again. In my case, I'm using B on my controller to back out, and in this interface we can see their relative strength and stats. And to reiterate, when a creature has been knocked out, it will have an X instead of a number. So what can we actually do? Let's look at our abilities. First thing to notice that each ability has a little icon next to it. Some of these icons represent biomes and some of them represent other things. For instance, this top one, laser cannon, is a mechanical biome for this mechanical creature. And so the ability has specific things that are different about it because of this biome. It's strong against this particular creature we're fighting against, desert, and it is weak against anomalies. And so we can use it to fight against the specific creatures that we have in front of us or plan ahead. Now, this one you'll notice has a different, and so does this one. They both have physical attacks. Now, physical damage is not the same. It doesn't have positives and negatives against different creatures. There are no biome effects for those. So the icon is giving us a visual indication of this. So let's focus on this top one because it gives us more information in the pop-up. It gives us the name. It gives us the ability biome. It also tells us whether it's effective or not. It's telling us that right now our biomes are optimal, we're fighting against a desert creature and we're going to get more damage than actually stated here. Now we can see that the damage stated is 315 to 342. That's the standard damage, not the damage we will get because of it being highly effective at the moment. It will be higher than that. There'll be some multiplier applied. I think the multiplier is about 1.5, maybe slightly higher, but we will get a higher damage than is stated here. At the bottom left for each of them, you'll notice that there's a cooldown value. Now this appears to be related to its position on this list. The top one is usually a low cooldown, usually 0, and then the next one down is 1, as is stated here. And then you can see a percentage chance to miss. So this one has a percentage chance to miss of 35%. So we're going to miss slightly more than 1 in 3 times. We don't have the biome information because this is physical damage. So this will apply generally to any biome. There are no positives and negatives at all. The next one down has a cooldown of 2, and you'll notice it says it's a special creature ability because this isn't so much as an attack as something we can do. So this one higher just says physical, and this one says special. Instead of giving us a damage range, it tells us what it can do, so remove all positive effects from the opposing creature. And you'll notice that this is a 0% chance of missing. We'll go into effects later. We can see before we even hover over it that the next one has a very different looking icon. It's some kind of defensive icon. This is Magnetosphere and it reflects damage. And these icons are important because they will show up on our health bar. again will go into effect shortly, but this reflects 18% of all incoming damage, and it cools down in 3 turns. But you'll notice that it applies for longer, so it's theoretically possible to have this applied multiple times. So for instance, we could apply it on the first turn, the second, third and fourth turn it will be cooled down. On the 5th turn we could apply it again, so for that last turn it could theoretically be applied twice, reflecting 36% of damage on that turn. Now what we mean by reflective damage is that incoming damage from the opponent, some of it will be reflected back, and then he will receive that damage as if we were attacking him. So it's worth considering the relative cooldowns as well as how long these things take to take effect. And then the last icon is again mechanical damage, and this one is actually an effect, but it does have a damage part to it, and again it has a 3 cooldown. So you'll notice that the cooldowns tend to go up the lower down they are, because the stronger abilities tend to be further down the list, and the cooldowns reflect this. Now different abilities will have different cooldowns. They won't always be in this order. Well, they will be in this order, but they won't be exactly as described here. So they won't always be 0, 1, 2, 3, 3. They could be different cooldowns, but in general, the more effective, the longer the cooldown. So obviously, looking at the cooldowns is part of planning ahead, deciding which thing to use first, what's going to be most effective in the circumstances we're in. Planning ahead is obviously a key part of the tactics of our battle, but also strategy will play a part here. I have a bit of a mixed strategy here because I am focusing on a couple of creatures that have an advantage to attack, but I'm also got one creature that has an advantage in defense. So you could have a full-on attacking strategy, you can have a defensive strategy, you can have a mixed strategy like I have here. If we compare the second 2 creatures, it has a weak attack against toxic, and I've chosen a toxic creature. So I've chosen a defensive strategy for that particular creature and that phase of play. But of course we won't always have the ideal lineup, so again it's worth maybe looking at what's to come and what kind of strengths and weaknesses they have. Now the other thing to bear in mind is there's a difference between missing and being dodged. So this has a 0% chance of missing, but a creature that has a very high agility or has an ability that can enhance its agility, that dodge percentage chance could also be increased. So it doesn't necessarily mean I will 100% hit it, I just probably will. So the rest is probably best done through demonstration. For instance, how much damage we actually apply. Let's actually use this laser cannon, and as it says, it's got a minimum and a maximum, but because we're up against something that has a weakness, I would suspect it should be higher. In fact, I know it will be higher than the minimum here, and it will be probably higher than the maximum here. So let's fire it off and see what we actually get. So the interface is telling me 532 strong in brackets. The strong comes from the fact that I was attacking my ideal biome, the one that has a weakness to me. And it did say it was going to be highly effective in the bracket, so that's where that comes from. Now, if you do the maths, then that's approximately 1.6% of the damage. No other damage could really fit that. 315 to 342, no other multiplier of exactly a point would fit within it. So it's around about 1.6. It might be 1.6 something. It seems to be 160% of the damage. Now this can be complicated by the fact that you can get critical hits, which presumably do more damage, and as I said, you could theoretically be dodged. I'm not 100% sure if a critical hit is the same as highly effective. I would need to do more testing. Either way, the mechanics in the background are whenever we hit the opposing creature, it's deciding whether it's had a critical hit, whether it's had a normal hit, or whether it's missed, or whether it's been dodged. And it's using the various stats to decide this. They're not immediately apparent to us. We can only really work them out by inferring from the numbers. Now you'll notice he's already taken his turn. It says it down here. He has a large heal in 3 turns using Nightfall. And at the top right hand corner underneath the health bar, we actually see an indicator of this, including a countdown. It's green and pointing upwards. So it's a positive effect. We even see the actual value, so how much he will be healed or the roll that he will have to make, between 627 and 719. Negative effects will be shown on the right hand side of the bar. So we get the name of the ability and the full details of the effect. And on the bottom screen where it tells us, this could be scrolling off. So this is helpful because it keeps it there until it takes effect or until it expires. That little clock countdown actually changes with each turn. We're now into turn 2, so the countdown timer includes the turn that we're in at the moment. So it should happen at the end of turn 4. You'll note that right now it's turn 2 and we still have the initiative because we still have this little green mark here. Nothing's changed. We still have a higher agility. And so that gives us an idea of when this will trigger. Okay, I'm going to stick with the demonstration of the multipliers. It will heal, but we will see our mechanical damage applied again. 556 strong. Note that hits around about 180%, hence my not wanting to really pin down how these multipliers work. And now, handily, it's got a negative on it. Now, Sandstorm. In the name, it clearly describes that that's probably a desert ability. And we can see they've started to use Sandstorm. Now, bear in mind when it says starts to use, this implies that it's a multiple round thing. And so it's cast defensive strength on itself and then it's going to do something else. And it's negative defensive strength. So it's leaving itself open to attack, probably in order to either do something on this round or next round. And we can look further. It says that it's got a defensive strength for 1 round. So probably in the very next round, it will do something to hurt us. Now I can't do an awful lot with this particular creature. I'm trying to get it up to 30 so I can maybe change some of these things. I won't go into that kind of mechanic in this particular video because this is all about the interface. But because I can't use an awful lot of mechanical damage, it's only going to take off less than half of that, then I might actually try and either hit heavily, which won't have a percentage multiplier, or I could remove all positive effects from him. Now this heal is obviously helping him every round and it's still going to last 2 rounds, so I'm going to do that. So it's disappeared from the screen. He no longer has that ability. He will not heal himself at the end of the turn. He's hit me again. And as you can see, it says finishes Sandstorm. So that was his big damage that was applied from that Sandstorm. So keep an eye out for those keywords starting and finishing. Now bear in mind, if he did something like increase his agility, this could switch. So we could suddenly see the turn initiative changing, which is how some people say, oh, they seem to be cheating, they're attacking me twice. Maybe they cast a high agility and put themselves in the advantage. So always keep an eye on this and what turn we're in and what stage. Keep thinking about what stage of the turn we are in. So we're in turn 4. It's my go first. Then he will go. Then there will be extra stuff applied. So attacks and healing take place at the end of the round, with attacks occurring first and then healing second. Let me have a think here. So this is an example of something that I quite like the ability of. This decreases its combat effectiveness for 3% for 5 turns. Its combat effectiveness, well, it has a 482 potential. Mine has 514. Neither of these are particularly high combat creatures, but that will knock it down. I don't know if it will actually use that exact number. In fact, let's see if it changes. But I'm going to do this anyway because it's a demonstration of something that will come up on the screen. So you can see it has double effect. First of all, it decreases the combat effectiveness, 3% for 5 rounds. And it also, equally for 5 rounds, it stops him dispelling it unless he has plenty of health. And obviously that amount of health there is more than the amount of health that he currently has. So he would be crazy to dispel that. Now, sometimes when you're playing in the lesser rounds, like I'm just fighting any old NPC here, this isn't somebody that has challenged me. Sometimes they are quite rubbish with their tactics. They can do silly things, but they're unlikely to dispel this because it would kill them. And you also saw then that it changed from 5 to 4 as the turn turned round. I'm going to go for my highly effective again. And as I said, it will roll a different number each time. And I have a feeling the combat effectiveness of the opposition may be taken into account, or maybe their agility. There's obviously some deep maths involved other than just a multiplier. It's not an exact science, it's obviously rolling a dice or using some kind of randomizer. And now he's got something that will last on him for 3. And at the end of each round that will apply, including on this round. Now unfortunately he's healing more than I can damage with this, so I might have to try with this if I'm going to keep this creature on the board. Or I could do this, remove all the positive effects, which I'm tempted to do. Notice it doesn't say remove all effects. It's not going to take these off, so it will just get rid of that. Or I could defend myself, but really I think I don't want him to heal. That's going to save him from... That's going to save him from too much. Now it's his turn. And there were no effects that were changing, except for this counts down now. I can't wipe him out, but I'm tempted to just try and do a heavy hit. But there's not an awful lot of difference between the multiplier of this and the wild charge, and this is going to hit, so I'm going to do that with that. Just hope he doesn't get a big hit on me. He certainly hadn't started to use something. No, he used a sacrifice move instead to boost the other members of his team. So we can see a cross where the number 1 used to be, showing that that one has now been knocked out. And a yellow indicator around number 2. I'm still on creature 1. It doesn't automatically switch 2 to 2, 3 to 3 whenever they change. So we've got two options here. We can either leave him with something to think about and then change, or we can change now before he hits us. We still have the initiative, so we can still go first. This won't do anything to my next creature. This only works on my current creature. This would obviously be a physical damage, so it wouldn't have to worry about multipliers. And this would only deal lower damage now. It'll only deal between the actual stated number, 315 to 342, because you'll note that it's neither a desert creature nor an anomalous creature. I could also leave him with something to think about, as I was saying. I could decrease his combat effectiveness for 5 turns and hope he doesn't knock me out. Although even if he does knock me out, I kind of already have the initiative here. Because I have 3 creatures and he only has 2 creatures. And also, this one's agility is 220 and this one's 314. But note, my next agility is only 161, so I will be losing the initiative as soon as I swap. So I'm tempted to leave him something to think about. So he used increase on his agility. He's buffing himself quite a lot. Remember, he had that sacrificial buff from earlier. Before I leave this fight, I might actually get rid of those. It means that he's wasted a couple of turns as well. I've kind of wasted a couple of turns in that I've stayed with this creature, but I am giving him something to think about, and I'm stopping him being quite so effective next turn. So now I am kind of getting into strategy here, but focus mainly on how the interface works and what we're actually looking at as we're going along. So, slow decay, take 232 to 260 radioactive damage every turn for 4 turns. That's going to kill me if I stay and don't do anything about it. Unfortunately, I can't do anything about it. I can only remove positive effects from him. I can't remove negative effects for myself. So that is going to kill me eventually. I could take a shot now and get some damage on him. I don't think that's necessarily a good idea because I really want to make use of this negatives while I'm on my new creature. So you will notice that this character will die in the background. I will be taking 4 lots of this damage. So let's switch my creature. Now this has an advantage defensively. It's not very good at attacking toxic. If you remember, I'm using a bit of a mixed strategy here with my choice of creatures. I can't rely on extra damage here. Now, one of the best things about this particular pet is parasitic larvae, which will be another negative effect. I just want to check how long this will take. That's 3 turns. So they'll be taking effect at a similar time. So I'm kind of counteracting him. It's always worth looking out for that bottom left where it says heavy damage, because if that's coming on you, you need to be thinking about that. I'm just checking on some timings here, which is one of the useful pieces of information we get from this. Obviously I've made him less combat effective, but that doesn't change his chance of hitting. and he is hitting me each time. I imagine it decreases his chance of critical him, but 3% isn't a lot. Now, just in case I start to be whittled down, let's go for this one. It's got a 4 cooldown, but it will take effect for 5 rounds, so it's probably worth doing, and I might even get a round where I get double if I use it wisely. Now you'll notice it said that my other character was knocked out. Here it says /JS9 was knocked out. That's my mechanical creature. I did say he would die, and he has. In the background, that damage that was left on him has whittled him down. The same would happen if this creature swapped out and then this parasitic larvae hit him while he had less than whatever it actually hits him with. At the moment, it wouldn't take him out. Especially as I don't have the advantage in the biomes here. If you remember, this is a defensive strategy, and if we look at the biome and what he's actually vulnerable to, he's not vulnerable to my attack at the moment. In fact, it would be relatively neutral. There's no interaction there. Obviously, I defend reasonably well against radioactive. It's not going to hit me as often or as hard. Now, I have a feeling that this guy is still going to win anyway, because he's healing himself, he's giving himself abilities. It depends how hard he hits me. So the parasitic larvae, as it says here, was triggered and he took heavy damage. So that eventually took effect. I'm left with very little I can do now. It's not going to take him out, but at least I'll get these back. But he could easily take me out by the look of it. I could swap my creature here and try and take the initiative. The problem with that is that I have poor defenses against radioactive if I were to swap. So I probably don't want to do that. This is still taking effect. So it's defending me a little bit, keeping me in the fight. I mean, if I were to do that and then move on, it could hurt him in the background, but I'm still a bit worried that he could hurt this one. So I'm going to go for the highest toxic damage I have and hope it takes him out. And it did. Much to the delight of the NPC by the look of it. So he's bringing in his new creature, and I now have the initiative again because I've got higher agility than him. But until I swap out, he has high defenses against my hits. Note the increased defense against toxic. So I don't really think there's much point in me sticking around here. I will get a bit of healing for another round at the end of this round. I could get a bit more healing for a few more turns and actually bring him back up, which could be worth doing if I was worried that I might have to come back to this character. If this character looks super tough and I didn't think I was going to be able to beat him, then healing him in the background would be probably a good move. I don't think that's necessarily worth it here. I might as well switch to this character. I wish you could just switch here. And now we're into a new round and I still have the initiative. Now I'm highly effective again. He has 2,428. I mean, this one is based on the target's agility. He only has agility of 132. So that's going to be high, but not at the top of that range. So I think I will just hit him hard. But first of all, just in case he's got good attack, I mean, it doesn't look like he does, but at least it's stronger than his agility. I'm just going to make sure that I can get healed later on down the line. I've got a bit of protection for a while and it will bring some back. And so that's going to happen in 3, and then as the turn changes it changes to 2. So at the end of 2 rounds. Let's do... Now this one's a multiple round one. Now I'm going to assume he's not going to whittle me down, and he's got nothing to swap to now. So I'm going to do the multiple round one. So it says per turn, and it tells me exactly how much per turn now. So you'll notice here that 343 damage per turn will be applied, and we can see when it will take effect and for how long if we've forgotten when it was, especially if this scrolls off. Now this one is a big one, but as I said, his agility is not super high, so it might not be the most effective, but it will get a multiplier. And it did take him out. Now this is the end process. We can actually see the things going on. Each of these has got different levels. This one's level 30, these two are level 29. When they're higher level, they get less experience, so they're only moving a little bit. If this was like a low level creature, you'd see it going round possibly past the 100% and even further. But this one only gained 10%, this one gained 10%, and this one gained 6%. I really love this ability to see exactly what's going on. That wasn't there when they first released it, but obviously somebody suggested it or they hadn't quite finished it. But it's really, really effective. You can see exactly how much progress is happening, and you don't have to rely on keeping an eye on the top right hand corner of your screen. But when we do leave the arena, we also see a reflection of what's going on in the top right hand corner of our screen, which will also tell us if we've got any genetic mutations and any nanites we've earned, or if we've earned anything else from the fight. And then post a match, we can go and have a look at our creatures and just see how they've been affected. Now, I've got an example here of characters that have actually got mutations available to them. This one, I actually don't want to do anything. I'm quite happy with his skill set. He's got a gene edit available, but I don't want to change anything anymore. This one, he has one gene edit available, and maybe I will change something. I'm not sure. I've been looking at it. I'm in two minds. I might decide before I actually go into a combat. They're just sitting there waiting for me. But you will notice that the gene edit is the second part. Once these are in level 30, this is a level 30 character. Usually the gene edits would apply to being able to increase their health or combat or agility, but now I can actually apply them to my abilities, and it will randomly roll from a short set of abilities that are available for this biome. And occasionally you will see abilities that are physical attacks, and I think some creatures, I'm not sure if all creatures, can seem to have cross biome abilities, but I'd need to do a bit more research as to when and how that happens. So there you go, an overview of the interface and a little bit of an insight into what might be going on under the hood. Until we get to look at the game files, which I haven't seen yet, then I won't be able to tell exactly how some of these things work, but we can get a pretty good idea from the numbers we're seeing on the screen and what's going on in the various areas of the screen, how the different icons work, etc. So I may take another deep dive at some point if we get a bit more detail on this. But until then, I've been Pharaoh, travel well, and goodbye for now.